welcome to HITC Sport. And right, imagine if your last financial takeover did not happen. Some football clubs are happy with the recent takeover of their club. Others feel like they're drowning in a sweaty armpit. So alright, let's see, alright? I'm gonna take a look and see where each Premier League club would be in 2020 if they were still owned by their previous owner, the one who sold them to the current mob running your club. Right, let's go. Arsenal, 11th in the Premier League. Okay lads, before Stan Kroenke, there was David Dean and Peter Hillwood. Now listen, these guys were two of the most important figures in Arsenal's history, but it was time to leave in 2007. Dean seemed to think that the club belonged at Wembley, which would have been weird. Listen, the reason they sold Arsenal is because they realised the club needed a financial superpower to pay off the stadium debts and compete with Roman Abramovich. Had the old regime stayed, they just stayed a bang average mid-table club, left behind by the ridiculous billionaires of modern football. Aston Villa, 24th in League One. Not much is known about Aston Villa's billionaire owner, Nassif Sawiris, but make no mistake about it, without him, this club would be facing extinction. Most Villa fans are queuing up to taste Jack Grealish's sweaty ball bag, but this is the man who you should really be in love with. The Chinese owner, Dr. Tony Xia, had made a complete and utter dog's dinner of a job. Buying a recently relegated club is a risk, but telling the world it would be the biggest club in Europe within 5 years, you'd swear he'd just recently been the subject of a medieval lobotomy. His short-term reckless spending did not pay off with promotion, leaving the club to drown in debt. Honestly, had Sawiris not bought the club in 2018, the club would have been relegated twice in a goddamn row, being handed point deductions, and be forced to sell any half-decent footballer and cramming their squad with cheap rubbish. Probably forced to buy the other Longstaff brother. And no, not Matty, the brother who works down the bank. Christ, the canteen dinner ladies would probably be forced to sell bags of their own hair online to help wipe the debt. Brighton, 20th in National League. Okay, let's be honest. Tony Bloom saved Brighton from near extinction. The job this professional poker player has done since buying his hometown club in 2009, he's been nothing short of an utter messiah. This guy actually has the interests of Brighton at heart. He's taken them from League One to the Premier League and kept them there. Not only that, under the previous owner Dick Knight, a lifelong fan of being chairman since 1997, the club just weren't going to be able to afford their new stadium. Bloom injected an £80 million loan into the club, essentially paying for the ground, and it paid off. Had they trundled along under Knight, weighed down by an unaffordable ground, then by 2020 they would be stuffed halfway down the goddamn conference, I can promise you that. No trips to Anfield, Old Trafford or the Etihad. No, instead it'd be bus trips to Eastleigh, Ebbsfleet and Solihull Moors. Good Christ. Burnley, 16th in the Championship. Okay lads, ever since local businessman Mike Garlick trotted his wallet into Turf Moor back in 2012, they've been promoted twice and turned themselves into a Premier League fixture. Another comfortable mid-table Stoke. And the best thing he did was not sacking Sean Dyche. Sure, this is probably all going to end in tears within 2 or 3 years. But for now, what a great job that man has done. The guy he inherited it from was Barry Kilby, who'd been on the Burnley board since 1998. Sadly, he had to step down for health reasons. But in this weird scenario, where I'm effectively chaining the previous owner to the club right up until 2020, this probably wouldn't have gone too well. Just more mid-table championship mediocrity. And lads, that's if they're lucky. Chelsea, 15th in Essex Senior League. Okay, not only did Roman Abramovich save Chelsea from almost oblivion in 2003, he bankrolled them into one of the biggest and best clubs in Europe. And he's still in charge 17 years later, when most assumed he'd have just gotten bored within 2 or 3 years. Under Ken Bates back in 2003, the club were unable to pay a £75 million loan, had debts of £96 million, they were in a financial hole. Never mind paying for the wages of Frank Lampard and John Terry, they could barely afford their bastard dinner. Christ, they were probably serving stale muesli in the canteen, and instead of glasses of water, they probably just had to drink their own tears. If the Russian hadn't come, they'd have been forced to sell the entire squad, being slapped with points deductions, they'd have fell down the leagues. But Chelsea, if they were stuck with Bates, a man who went on to take Leeds into administration, then honestly, by now, the club would have folded and reformed as the Phoenix AFC Blues in the 9th tier of English football. No more trips to Anfield and Old Trafford, nah, instead a London rivalry with #United. Christ above! Crystal Palace, 7th in Isthmian League. Yeah, same here lads, Crystal Palace. Oh, 10 years ago, Steve Parish essentially saved the club from dying. Make no mistake about it, by 2010, Simon Jordan had steered them headfirst into administration. By his own admission, the guy had just run out of money. So in this weird scenario, where I'm forcing this guy to stay on for another decade, oh lads, like Chelsea, they would have died to death. They shut down the club, reopened as a Phoenix team, as AFC Palace stuck down the back arse of the Isthmian League. Everton, 16th in Premier League. Alright, the Farhad Mashiri billionaire takeover of Everton back in 2016, It hasn't really gone to plan. They've just demonstrated a complete lack of awareness in the transfer market, chucking around cash like a teenage girl who's just stolen their daddy's credit card. Moshiri should probably be forced to swallow his wallet whole for that one, because that is unforgivable. But the owner before him was Bill Kenwright, who had been on the Everton board since 1989, being the largest stakeholder since 2004, right through the comfortable David Moyes regime. He sold Everton to take them to the next level. Had he stayed, Everton would have just been left behind. No big name managers, no £40 million marquee signings, just a low budget squad with David Moyes back as manager. It would basically be like 2003 all over again. Fulham 13th in Championship. Okay, yes, Fulham right now have megabucks Shahid Khan, one of the richest men on planet Earth. Considering they've been relegated twice, it hasn't been the big money financial revolution they might have wanted. But anyway, his predecessor, Mohammed Al Fayed's reign, that was a lot better. Yes, there was that ridiculous Michael Jackson statue outside the ground, but he also took the club into the Premier League, kept them there, reached the Europa League final, upgraded the stadium. He was a great owner, but he is 87 years of age. So probably wouldn't have the energy for it anymore. Let's say Championship mid-table. Leeds 13th in League One. Yeah, right now Leeds fans love Marcelo Bielsa more than they do their own kids. Andrea Radrizzani should also be seen as a saviour. He's the Italian businessman who rid you of Massimo Cellino for £45 million back in 2017. Imagine still being run by the basket case that was Cellino. It'd be like willingly getting in a taxi driven by a f***ing cat. And do you really think Bielsa would have blinked twice at a job offer from a man with a history of sacking managers every 6 weeks? He'd probably rather drink a bowl of his own forehead sweat. With Cellino still in charge, they'd be halfway down League One with Paul Lambert in the dugout. A prospect that would probably cause Leeds fans to vomit blood. Leicester 15th in Championship. Okay, listen, yes, the Vichai Srivaddhanath and Abrapat takeover back in 2010 was the best thing to ever happen to Leicester City. God rest his soul. He and his son took Leicester from a newly promoted Championship club to Premier League champions and beyond. Just insane. The previous owner, Milan Mandaric, he was a good football man, but he's only worth £75 million. And in comparison to modern day filthy rich owners, he by contrast barely has enough to afford a haircut. But he's not a complete madman and did a great job at Portsmouth, so 15th in the Championship with Nigel Pearson still in charge. Liverpool 7th in Championship. Yeah, unthinkable. Liverpool, the great Liverpool, is 7th in the Championship. Lads, don't underestimate just what an utter mess things were under their previous regime. Tom Hicks and George Gillette, a couple of American co-owners who despised each other with a burning passion. There were fan protests. By the time they left, the club were circling the relegation zone, having lost at home to Blackpool. Things were a complete joke and they were only going to get worse. The club was riddled with debt, they were on the brink of administration, and they were only there for 3 years. Christ, give them 13 years in the boardroom. I promise you, this great club would have been forced to sell their assets, and yeah, would have been relegated by 2015. And the tragic thing is, they probably wouldn't have bounced back either. Thank Christ for the sake of Liverpool fans. These guys sold up to Fenway Sports Group, because if they didn't, oh, you'd be playing Preston and Blackburn every week. Man City 21st in League 2. Oh lads, can you imagine Man City without the big money oil takeover? It's a bit like if Paris Hilton hadn't been born into ridiculous wealth. With her brains and talent, she'd probably be picking up dog shit for a living. Lads, the previous City owner was Thaksin Shinawatra, who back in 2008 had his £800 million fortune frozen and was on the run from the Thai government. Not to mention he didn't have a clue how to run a goddamn football club. Had City been forced to endure him for another decade, oh Christ, it'd be like letting your kids be raised by a family of malnourished crack addicts. After 12 years of sleeping in cupboards and drinking toothpaste for breakfast, the children would probably be lucky to still be alive. 12 years of slave sounds bad. 12 years of Thaksin Shinawatra, the club would have been forced to sell the Etihad and any half-decent footballer with a working pulse, and they'd probably be serving bowls of hair down the canteen. City fans might be offended by my prediction of 21st in League 2, but lads, with this fella running your club, that is being optimistic. Since 2008, he's had more prison sentences than I've had tugs in the shower. And trust me, growing up, my bathroom floor looked like yogurt. That's a nasty image. Man United 3rd in Premier League. Okay, let's be honest, the Glazers at Man United have done nothing but take money out of the club. The club is riddled with debt and they've done nothing about it. They've only been in charge for 15 bastard years, and it's gotten to the point where disillusioned fans have just broken away and formed other clubs. The main shareholders before the Glazers were Irish, JP McManus and John Magnier, who became involved in a legal dispute with Sir Alex Ferguson over the ownership of a racehorse. Bit weird, but still, during their time as owners, the club were successful on and off the pitch. So yeah, were the Irish billionaires still in charge? I'd say they'd be more or less where they are now. Newcastle 17th in League 1. Okay, don't get it wrong. Newcastle selling the club to Mike Ashley was without doubt the wrong move. The man has since turned this once proud club into a goddamn billboard. But the previous owners were the family of Sir John Hall, a local millionaire who spent big in the 90s, but that was back when £15 million for Alan Shearer was a world transfer record. Nowadays that wouldn't even pay for Danny Ink's left leg. Not to mention in 2007 the club was £71 million in debt. John Hall was literally not able to take this club forward. The man's net net worth is 75 million quid. Yes, he could afford one Virgil van Dijk or two Joe Lintons, but then he and his family would have to live on a diet of gravel and toothpicks for the next bastard year. I'm sorry, but in this mega rich Premier League, even Championship, this club wouldn't be able to compete on a financial standpoint. And yeah, it would be on League One, but at least they still have the derby. Sheffield United 8th in Championship. Okay, yes, I know the Saudis are involved, but Kevin McCabe is still officially a co-owner of Sheffield United. Why do you hate each other? You work for the same company. It would be like if James secretly wished I got hit by a bus on a daily basis. Well, joke's on you, fella. I haven't left this sweaty room in 6 bastard weeks. I smell like a 4-week-old corpse. Anyway, before Prince Abdullah bin Masud bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Christ, imagine getting that in the back of your shirt. It would probably cost a monthly wage. Before he arrived, it was just McCabe on his own. There's no doubt the Saudis' wealth has helped the Blades climb the league. So let's say without him, 8th in the Championship. Southampton 3rd in Championship. Okay, lads, Southampton's Chinese owners are already trying to sell up just 3 years after buying the goddamn club. Katharina Lebherr was the one who sold up, daughter of the formerly deceased owner Marcus. Under her control, the Saints went from League One to the Premier League, so she was doing a good job. Sure, they needed Chinese investment to take them to the next level and would probably be relegated under the previous regime. I mean, that's the way things were heading, but they'd still be breathing. It would be alright. Tottenham 17th in Premier League. Okay, lads. Spurs' previous owner was Sir Alan Sugar. You know, that shouty potato off The Apprentice. According to him, Tottenham was the worst investment of his life. He hated every second of it. And he also despises footballers with a blinding passion. Right, so forced to be run by an owner who hates the sport and his employees. So pairing a football club with sugar is like pairing a diabetic with sugar. There'd be no ambition, no European football, just a disinterested owner refusing to open his wallet. I.e. the modern day Mike Ashley. Christ above, they probably have Steve Bruce in charge as well. West Brom 9th in Championship. Listen, West Brom didn't need the Chinese investment to survive. Jeremy Pearce had been in charge since 2005 until he sold up for 150 million to Guangdong Lai in 2016. And considering under Pearce, the Baggies were a yo-yo club hopping between divisions, then yeah, it would be more of the same. West Ham 20th in Championship. Okay, West Ham fans probably hate their current owners, but lads, trust me, it could have been worse. Your previous owner was an Icelandic bank right around the time of the financial collapse of the Icelandic banks. Not great timing. Sure, they've since recovered, but over 10 years of being owned by a company trying to wade their way through their own financial cowpath, it would be a rocky road to say the least. Wolves 16th in Championship. Okay, we all know the Fossum International Group have completely changed the landscape of Wolves. Under the previous owner, Steve Morgan, a good football man, sure, but his managerial appointment stunk of rotten cow meat. Christ above, they'd probably currently be employing Brian McDermott. But Morgan didn't exactly have the club on the edge of oblivion. When he sold up in 2016, they were 14th in the Championship. 4 years later, they'd probably be still there. Anyway, that's it. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and as always, I'll talk to you in a while.